Now I think I would like to introduce Governor Jerry Brown.
I suppose I'm invited here because I was here before. And I still have the same job, so that's unusual enough. In fact, I don't think anybody has ever come back from so long in exile as I have, for 28 years, from 1982 to 2010. So there's a certain virtue in survivability. Also, because the older you get, the more you are kind of looking backwards, because there's more of that than is up in front. So I want to come back and just meet a few people, see Nora and Mother, Lois. I always liked spending time with Gregory Bateson. I like reading his materials. I'm still reading Steps to an Ecology of Mind. And, I find, in fact, I'm going back to read all the books that I read in the 60s. Because I didn't, first of all, I didn't read all the ones I said I read. Secondly, I didn't finish them. And thirdly, even when I understood them or thought I did, I understand them differently when I read them today. So I don't know whether that's the pleasures of old age, that you can reread things and see it in a different perspective, and then you can remember yourself and what you were thinking and how you think differently now. And that's illuminating, and illumination is a good thing. At least I find it's a good thing, particularly when you're living in a world of such non-illumination or confusion or obscurity. And I remember in Steps to an Ecology of Mind, Gregory says somewhere that there's some new kind of thing, there's a different way we have to think. If you remember when he describes cutting down a tree, that the person thinks I'm cutting down a tree, but it's really to be viewed in some other way of looking at it. Now, how the hell you do that, I don't know. I've been trying to do that all my life. I'm not really cutting down the tree. I'm not really running for election. It's not me really doing this. It's all this interacting elements of relationships or something or other. Sounds like that's kind of important to think about, and I'm still thinking about it. He gave me a copy of his Mind and Nature, which I lost. But I remember he inscribed it. And he said, the new only comes out of the random. Now, I didn't understand for many years what that meant. The new only comes out of the random. Over the years, I got to understand that. If it's all planned, if it's all order, there's no space for anything unexpected. So chaos precedes cosmos. Disorganization can open the way for new pathways. And being at least perceived to be somewhat disorganized, I kind of like that idea. And actually, being somewhat random is a virtue, not a vice. Although in the political matters, you're supposed to be consistent, you're supposed to have it together all the time, and you have to create and foster the sense that it's orderly. And yet, there has to always be room for what is unexpected and what is not prescribed and already implicit. And so there's new possibilities that we all need, whether it's in a job or a relationship or thinking through problems or the world itself, and right here in California, because we've all got problems. And the climate change, species extinction, all these different issues, and not to mention inequality that's growing. And what is the ecology of that? 30 years ago, the most affluent, and you could look at it at different levels, but just take 1%, were earning as a share of all the income generated in California under 9%. Today that figure is around 22%. So that's a big jump in the slice of the pie that is being received by the top 1%. Now if you go down the various groupings in society, you're going to find the distribution is different, and that distribution has a lot of consequences. Many of them not good. But that too has emerged. It's evolved. Now how that all works, globalization, technology, whatever. So that's one set of problems. And then you got the climate change and the rising of the oceans and the increase in the fire season and the more rapid melting of the ocean, of the snowpack. all sorts of issues that are pretty real. But of course, they're not as real as the immediate. So we're dealing with the immediate, whether it's taxes or jobs or all things, crime, all those things that come up in politics. Well, those themselves are just symptoms, and the larger patterns of how we're organized would have to be understood. The other thing I want to mention, because I keep thinking about these things, I get at things a little more slowly than most, but I have a bent of mind where I like to keep going back to the same ideas. I mean, not only am I reading Bateson, I'm reading Ivan Illich, and I'm rereading, which is a book no one here has read, but there's a book on ascetical theology by Alphonsus Rodriguez that we were required to read in the Jesuit seminary, where I was in 1956. And this book was rather boring at the time, and it's more boring now. But I really like to reread it to try to remember how I felt about it reading then, and how did people in the 16th century, maybe they found it exciting, because it had been around for nobody reads it anymore. And that's another thing that's interesting. Books that last for 400 years and then people stop reading them. That's worth, well, how did that happen? So I keep reading these things. One of the essays that Gregory wrote, Steps to Ecology of Mind, he talked about I can't remember what he said, whether billions of people are going to die, or a whole species, or nations, but whatever it was bad. Unless we dealt with one of these three conditions. I don't know where he gets these ideas, and I don't think he is speaking ex cathedra, that is with papal authority. He's just another guy talking, but it's pretty interesting. So he says you've got three conditions. One is population growth, another one is technological change, and the other is what he called the Occidental idea of man. Now, he says you don't have to change all three to prevent catastrophe, but you got to change one. And he thought maybe the idea that we have of ourselves, maybe that's the idea we might change. So I keep looking out for signs. We can't use Occidental, I'm not sure what that means, but some idea of us. Now, in thinking about what's the Western idea of man, as you come across the San Francisco Bay Bridge from the Oakland side, there's an electronic billboard. It's been up there for about a month by Sprint. Nice flashes, stays there for 5 seconds. And it says, our goal is your unlimited satisfaction.
Wow. Yeah, right.
That's what it says. And I keep seeing that. Our goal is your unlimited satisfaction. Now that, by the way, would offend Alphonsus Rodriguez deeply. He was about curbing one's sense of satisfaction or appetite or desire or whatever. So I think about that. Every time I go by that sign, I say, that's an idea that we better change. And if we can change that, maybe we can save things. But that thing keeps flashing. Yeah, it's there and you can see it for miles and miles. How do you take the ideas of Bateson and whatever else has followed in the last 30 years, and whatever the hell Cybernetics is all about, and I think of that helmsman, or the control, the governor on the machine. I think I'm trying to hold it all down. I can tell you they want to spend more money than they should in Sacramento, the state capital. Those ideas are worth thinking about theoretically, but then trying to use it as some kind of mirror or lens to look at the practical challenges. And we have a lot of challenges. I mean, we all talk about it. And how you want to look at it, how drastic or how ominous or how excited you are. It's pretty serious. Maybe everybody thinks that. Never is. It's always serious. I will end with the quote from Antonio Gramsci, and we'll just paraphrasing. That is, pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will. I don't know if that's cybernetic, but it comforts you when you can't quite see how the hell we're going to get from here to there.
I can't tell you how heartening it is to know that there's at least one politician out there who's using these ideas.